Hi, I'm Joshua Frank, co-founder and CEO of The Tie. I'm pleased to be joined by Arthur Breitman, co-founder of Tezos and member of the Tezos Foundation Council, Fedor, head of core engineering from TriliTech, and Yann, head of engineering of Nomadic Labs for our quarterly State of Tezos call. We'll begin by exploring the technology behind Tezos and its unique differentiators. Following that, we'll dive into the platform's key advancements in 2023 and noteworthy highlights from the final quarter. Finally, we'll wrap up with a look ahead and what the future of holds for Tezos in the coming year. As a reminder, the information contained in this webinar is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice. In past quarterly calls and webinars, we've covered a lot about Tezos and its key differentiators. So let's jump right in. So last year, Tezos made the exciting announcement of Tezos 2.0. And so Arthur, looking to you, can you explain what Tezos 2.0 is about? And why it is important for the success of the Tezos blockchain in the long run?
I want to clarify that Tezos is a blockchain, it's a product, so it can't make announcements. There are several teams working on the Tezos core protocol, including Nomadic Labs, including TriliTech, and those teams have proposed a roadmap for a product called Tezos 2.0. Regarding Tezos 2.0, what is it? Essentially, it's a way to scale Tezos to extremely high throughputs and very low latency, but also to provide a better developer experience, allowing developers to use familiar mainstream programming languages like JavaScript, Python, C#, Java, as a smart contract language. So it's a very ambitious goal, and it combines, I would say, the best of scaling via rollups, which enables decentralization, while at the same time keeping a single big composable state.
And so can you explain what the Tezos 2.0 rollout looks like and how those that are listening can get involved? I think, obviously we have a lot of listeners. We have builders, we have, investors, we have users. And then what will a user be able to do with Tezos 2.0 that, theoretically that they wouldn't have been able to do with Tezos, the way that it was originally construed?
So the rollout is a work in progress, and it involves the collaboration of several teams across the world. And of course, the rollout of Tezos 2.0 is also contingent on the governance process on the Tezos blockchain. That being said, a lot of it is actually built as a rollup, and so doesn't even involve that much of a transformation of the core protocol itself. But what should users expect? Essentially, the same things they've been expecting and receiving out of Tezos: stability, performance. But more of it, so more performance. We had a demonstration last year of a million transactions per second using the smart rollup technology on top of Tezos. So this type of throughputs, very low latencies. We're looking at bringing subsequent frequencies to the ledger, but also more importantly, very, very good developer experience. So when you say user, I don't know if we're talking about a user using the chain or a user as a developer.
So both, right? The user, the actual end user of the chain, and then, so what is the difference, I guess, for a developer, and then what is the difference for an end person interacting directly with the chain or with an application developed on top of the chain?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the difference with the end user is essentially more applications, richer application, more responsive applications, and that is enabled by the fact that we can attract far more developers to the ecosystem by offering these traditional and familiar developing environments.
And so
I can probably add more details, if you like. So Tezos 2 is a vision for the future evolution of Tezos, but it builds on top of prior evolution. So Tezos has been improving performance over time. You probably know about shorter finality, shorter block time, so latency has been going down. That improves user experience. Throughput has been maximum available throughput has been increasing, which is also affecting latency, improving user experience in the end. And we released smart rollups technology last year that was adopted by bakers through governance process. So now there's a opportunity for very high throughput on Tezos with horizontal scaling. So Tezos 2 is building on top of that, offering in the future very high throughput through vertical scaling in the rollups. And in addition to that, better interoperability with other systems, so bringing together EVM compatibility, new languages like JavaScript, unmodified JavaScript on blockchain, and existing languages from like Michelson, Lego, and SmartPy, and also composability, so that ability to have applications written in different languages, in Solidity, Lego, or JavaScript, interacting with each other in atomic transactions. So that's the like long-term vision for high performance, great composability, and interoperability. But we are approaching it incrementally, so it's not a big bang at the end. It's a sequence of steps, bringing closer, with each step bringing some tangible benefits to the users.
And so, to you, Arthur, as Tezos, 2.0 is rolled out, and obviously it's rolled out over time and in steps. How do you view that it eventually, differentiates Tezos from a lot of the other chains that are, being talked about in the market these days?
I think better performance. And so better performance means it can mean lower fees, but also credibly lower fees. It's not just that these happen to be low in a given circumstance, but they are credibly low because the throughput is so large. Low latency, but also reliability. I would say over the years, it's been a strong suit for the Tezos blockchain. It's been very dependable. It's also the demonstration that Tezos is always at the forefront of innovation. It was the first chain to launch with slashing in proof of stake, and is now, I think, the first to provide this level of scaling. And so it's a knowledge that when you build on Tezos, essentially your application is future-proof because it's built on a blockchain that keeps evolving and doesn't have just one trick up its sleeve. Ease of use for developer is just trying to make the best developer experience possible and the best user experience possible using the latest R&D that's available in the space.
So, kind of a follow on, just, kind of out of my curiosity, obviously block space has been something that has been hard to come by these days with gas fees on other chains becoming expensive. And so I think the idea of moving to, a network that has incredibly low fees, that's scalable, that you can build on is exciting. What are some of the applications that you think are going to be now possible with Tezos 2.0 that are really going to benefit from the scalability and low fees that it will bring?
I think we've seen a lot of applications in the blockchain world that have a very high value per user. And, like whether it's gambling, finance, these type of things, they are characterized even outside of the blockchain world by this very high value per user, and that's a function of the gas cost. When it costs $30 to do a transaction, it is only when like the value of each transaction is very, very large that you can justify this. Once you have truly scalable chain and extremely low fees, I think we can see new applications in gaming, also new applications in finance, but without necessarily having to tie every transaction to such a large outcome. And so applications that can credibly serve millions of people, which we don't really have today.
And so back to you, Fedor. One thing I noticed was the Etherlink handle on Twitter X published its first tweet last week. Can you explain what Etherlink is and why it's important?
Sure. Etherlink is a EVM compatible rollup on Tezos. So it builds on top of smart rollup technology that went live last year. It is bringing EVM compatibility to Tezos ecosystem. So you know that Tezos Layer 1 is has different technology, more focused on security and smart contracts that some people have formally verified their correctness, etc. But there's a lot of applications built in Solidity. So Etherlink brings this compatibility for people to deploy existing applications in Solidity in Tezos ecosystem and link them to Tezos Layer 1 and to other blockchains, of course. So the launch of Etherlink, initial launch is planned for March with a continuous evolution after that. And it is going to be launched as a decentralized system from the very beginning, not multi-sigs, etc., like some other projects are starting with. It is planned to have very high throughput thanks to data availability layer that is also in progress, and we are close to public beta and testing by bakers. And then in the future, it should bring MEV protection for users so that transactions that you're doing on chain can be exploited by other actors. So I think that is an important value proposition for end users and also for developers building application on Etherlink.
How are you able to achieve the MEV protection? I'm curious.
There are multiple ways to do that with our teams working on, in parallel, multiple approaches. So there's threshold encryption, for example. There's fair ordering, etc. So we are exploring those directions.
And then Arthur, to you, can you kind of explain, the benefits of using Etherlink versus some of the other existing, Ethereum L2s that are, mentioned, like Arbitrum and Optimism and others?
I mean, those are Ethereum L2s. The first thing to understand is that even though some of them have built technology, like so Arbitrum has built, fraud-proof and refutation technology, Optimism hasn't actually built any of this technology. So right now, these rollups on Ethereum, they're essentially entirely controlled and secured by centralized entities, right? So if you're using Arbitrum, Arbitrum has the power to do anything they want to your transactions or your assets. The same goes with even more so with Optimism. So it's a rollup that's actually decentralized. So if you care about decentralization, censorship resistance for this application, I think it's important. It's built on Tezos, and so Tezos is a platform that keeps evolving and has evolved historically faster than Ethereum. It has a direct connection with the Tezos ecosystem, and also it's a seed of something bigger. It's not going to just stay an Etherlink rollup. I think over time we're going to see Etherlink evolving and becoming a part of Tezos 2.0.
And how do you kind of think about the future from like being, single chain versus multi-chain and user experiences that are cross-chain? Kind of how do you view the future user experience maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now?
I mean, I don't think a user ever benefits from like using multiple chain. As a user, it just fragments the experience. The reason that people use multiple chain today is because the application that they want happen to be on different chains, or sometimes there's some weird integration which are made, like you have some blockchain that only build part of the technology. And the vision for Tezos has always been to have an ecosystem that was self-sufficient, where you don't need to have 5 different tokens to do something. It's providing the best possible experience for the user. So the fact that the environment, the industry is going to be multi-chain, that's a reality. It's just because there's competition, and that's of course healthy that there is competition in the space. But ultimately, multi-chain is not in itself a feature for the user. It's just a reflection of competition, and I do expect that we'll see some consolidation over time. I don't really think that the future of using an application is using 5 different tokens, one for doing your data availability on some chain, and then like one for doing your sequencing and another one here. That's just an excuse for selling tokens, to be honest.
Well, I think
infrastructure percent of view, it just doesn't make sense.
One thing that I'd probably add, and I'd be curious if you agree, is also like I think the reason that so much usage is multi-chain now is also because of airdrops, right? Chasing of airdrops across other chains, I think has been part of the driver there.
Yeah, and for sure people have made money in airdrops, but like I think when people think like, oh, the use case of crypto is getting an airdrop, there's something, they're missing something here that can't be the purpose, or like it can't sustainably be the purpose, because like why do the airdrops have value in the first place? So as always, it's just a game of hot potato. But one thing I like to say is that we're building Tezos as if this is going to matter. If nothing matters, then yeah, everything is a multi-sig, and you just do an airdrop of a meme coin and you just rinse and repeat. And we see all of that in the industry. But if what we're building actually matters, if there are important use cases that need to be built on these chains, then you need an integrated stack, you need resilient technology, you need something real, and that's what we've been building.
And so, Yann, to you, can you explain how the Tezos blockchain smart rollups work and how they differ, or if they differ from rollups on, we spoke about Optimism and Arbitrum as examples earlier, but other chains more broadly?
Yeah, I can do that. Try not to enter into too many technical details and stay sufficiently high level. The thing that you need to understand first is that in traditional blockchain, everything is revalidated by all nodes in the system. So in traditional layer 1, you find this model applied, where you have the layer 1 taking care of both securities, so the consensus algorithms typically, and some crypto money based protection. And there is also the application of operations that is taken care of. And so a lot of computational power is necessary to make all this work fast. And if you have enough activity, you reach some limits very quickly, and then everyone has to battle for the resources, and then the fees goes up. So a simple idea that has been pushed recently is to actually separate the concerns, to say, okay, let's as has been said previously, let's keep the security in the end of the layer one, and offload everything that is about execution of operations to a second layer, a set of nodes that have very specific role, that is to execute the operations. So you can see smart rollups more or less as a computational device that you can plug in the layer one, and that will take care of the execution of operations on a limited set of powerful machines. So if you want to add more power, you add more machines, and you can also make this machine very, I would say, very powerful, because they are in a limited numbers. So the main idea of smart rollups is this one, but you don't trust this new device. Actually, the layer one will also check that this device are not cheating about the way they execute the operation. So the layer one is able at any time to check or to detect fraud with respect to the execution of operations. That's called fraud detection. And in the case of Tezos, we have implemented the optimistic rollups approach, which means that by default, the rollups are computing a lot of things and posting regularly on the layer one hash proofs that they have about the state, their current state. And at any time, anyone can check that this hash is valid by also executing the operations. If that's not the case, there is a possibility to punish dishonest participant. And that way, actually, you separate the concerns, and you allow what Fedor called before horizontal scaling, because you can add as many new CPUs if you want it in the system to help scalability. So that's the basic, it's the general idea with optimistic rollup. In our case, in the case of Tezos, we have actually a very two specificities that are important. The first one is that we make no compromise on decentralization. So anyone can originate rollup, anyone can run any rollup, can check any rollup, and participate in the fraud detection mechanism, so that it's really open to anyone, and there is no an actor with a specific role that would allow him to actually control, to censor what is going on these rollups. And the second point is the fact that our rollups are enshrined, which means that they are really part of the protocol. Whereas if you look at Arbitrum, for instance, it's a smart contract. So it's different implementation techniques, if you want, but the advantage of being enshrined is the fact that you can implement more sophisticated mechanisms in the system, and also you are future proof, because since we have this self-amending process in Tezos, the ability for the protocol to be patched again and again, actually, when you deploy a smart rollup, you gain new features every time Tezos is updated. So it's kind of future proof when you invest in these smart rollups.
And so, Arthur, to you, as the capacity of smart rollups on Tezos continues to increase, I read that there's discussions or plans or proposals around the Tezos ecosystem activity converging onto a single canonical rollup that can handle the vast majority of activity within the network. Can you explain what that means and why that's a desired outcome?
Yeah, so this one is a little surprising, I think, sometimes. When people think of rollup, people mostly think of horizontal scaling. And there's basically two broad approaches to scaling. Horizontal scaling mean you make a lot of things in parallel. And vertical scaling means you put a lot more resources to do the one thing. So when people think of rollups, because they allow the parallel processing of many transactions, because they allow like a form of sharding, people always think that, oh, you're going to have many rollups talking to each other, and that's how you scale. And they contrast this with a monolithic approach for scaling, where you say, no, we're just going to have one big state, and then we'll just have very powerful machine run it. And that's the approach taken by, for example, Solana. And one thing which is underappreciated is that the best way to do vertical scaling is actually to use a rollup. And the reason is because in a rollup, in an optimistic rollup, your assumption is only that you have a single honest actor who cares in the world. You just need one honest person to care, and your rollup is secure. Whereas for an L1, for validation, you need an honest majority of the validators. And so because you transform this assumption, you can have a very decentralized set of validators who don't have to do a lot of compute, and then outsource the compute to only a few parties who don't really have to be trusted, because you have an any trust assumption. Essentially, you just need like one person to be honest. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get to do this very, very like strong vertical scaling without compromising on decentralization. And that's currently the approach that we're looking at.
And so, well, we're actually getting a couple of questions from the audience, so maybe I'll throw some of these things in as we kind of go through, if that's all right with you guys. One of the questions is just who is using smart rollups? Like, who are the core users of them?
I would say the main user right now is Etherlink. Although Etherlink right now is only on testnet, it should be released soon, and Etherlink will be the biggest user of the smart rollup. I think a lot of people think of rollups, and it's because it's a marketing that's happened on the chain. They think of rollup primarily as a customization mechanism, saying like, oh, you can write your custom logic, and that's certainly possible. I think a lot of the time when people write custom chains, what they want more than the customization is the guarantees around fees. They just want to know they're not competing with fees with anyone. And if you give it one composable state with a lot of throughput, then I think you get mostly that, not so much customization. So the smart rollup, it's open to custom chains for people who want to build custom chains, but primarily it's being built as a scaling solution for Tezos, more so than as a product to launch custom rollups. So we might see some of those.
And another question from the audience, which I think relevant to this topic, is it correct to say that enshrined rollups make the reputation game secured by the layer one itself and not by the owners, multi-sigs of the rollup itself, as we sometimes see in the L2 world?
I think there's two things to distinguish. One is having basically backdoors, so multi-sig backdoors, like we see in every other rollup solution. So that's regardless of whether or not you're enshrined, the multi-sig backdoor is a problem. The biggest difference with Enshrine is, are you a part of the protocol or are you just someone's smart contract? And if you look at Arbitrum today, assuming they get rid of multi-sig, it's still someone's smart contract. And put it bluntly, if there's a bug in the Arbitrum smart contract, the Ethereum chain will not fork to protect it, because it's just someone's application running on top of it. And that's also why they have a multi-sig, because basically they want this safety net. The difference with an enshrined rollup is that it's seen as part of the L1, and if something terrible happened and it's a bug, the L1 has solidarity with it and forks with it. It sounds like a small thing, but it's actually a very big deal when you're building on a rollup.
And so, to you, Fedor, we hear the word decentralization a lot, but how truly decentralized are the major chains? I mean, I think we actually, we kind of hit on this maybe a little bit earlier in this conversation, both L1s and L2s. How much does that matter? And how does the Tezos blockchain community approach the issue?
So it comes back to the discussion of meaningful usage for blockchains, right? So blockchains are particularly useful for storing some assets there that are valuable, whether it's gaming assets, NFTs, or DeFi assets like stablecoins. And when you store assets on blockchain, you like them to be safe. And if the future of the particular chain depends on a small number of signatures, like 5 or 7, and it can be easily compromised. So it's important to have high decentralization, so that a lot of actors are running the blockchain and validating it, and you have very low chance of compromising it. And there are multiple trade-offs here. So, for example, if you want to have high throughput on layer 1, then you have to require very high performant machines from everyone running the nodes, and that limits the number of people who can run those machines. So that immediately affects the decentralization. In case of Tezos, layer 1 requirements, hardware requirements are pretty low. So you can run Tezos node on a Raspberry Pi, for example, which means it's accessible to almost anyone to run a Tezos node. And we are making a different trade-off. We are putting high requirements on hardware inside the Tezos II canonical rollup, where the security trade-off is different. You need only one on the spot, as Arthur mentioned. So that's a very nice combination. I think it's a sweet spot in design with high throughput thanks to rollup technology, but still very high security thanks to layer 1 decentralization. And it's a single system. It's not a two systems like Ethereum, Arbitrum, etc. With different parts. It's a single system, layer 1 and layer 2 combined, benefiting from decentralization and performance. And it's also, in case of Tezos, it's important to remember that Tezos community is highly engaged in the evolution of layer 1. The evolution of Tezos is decided on the blockchain itself, and there have been 15 upgrades already with very high participation from community in the evolution. So it's a lot of people taking part in the decisions here, and decentralization is very high.
And so pivoting to kind of some of your key advancements and use cases last year. So one thing that Arthur mentioned earlier, which was that last year, I think it was in July, you demonstrated 1 million transactions per second on the Tezos blockchain. So Yann, how are you able to accomplish that? What is the significance of hitting 1 million TPS? And is that the kind of average speed users in the future can expect to experience? And then what are the use cases you see on Tezos that are best positioned to take advantage of that scalability?
Yeah, so first, actually, the peak was 1.4 million TPS to be precise, but it doesn't really matter. It's a symbolic bar of 1 million TPS that has been crossed, and it has been crossed simply by applying the horizontal scalability that we were describing before, just at large scale. So running 1,000 rollups, processing on average 1,000 transactions per second, then boom, you get more than 1 million TPS. Okay. So this is a demonstration that not only in principle we can have this horizontal scalability on Tezos, but actually the layer 1, all the systems, the entire stack is able to really make this go through this bar. So it's really it's actually done. It's done. Tezos is able to deal with that kind of capacity. Now, for the average user, it's to be honest, I think for the end users, they don't really care. They care about latency. They want responsiveness. They want yeah, everything that has been described before about simple place, a clear place where to put all their assets, their apps, etc. For the apps builders, they do care also about capacity, and that's clearly a good property for a system to have this ability to scale. While first, because the kind of use cases that you can apply here are the embarrassingly parallel DApps. If you have a DApp that has a clear way to be spawned, I would say, many times, then rollups are perfect for that. If you have high internal activity and quite low communication, it's nice. It's the good kind of usage that you can target. And also, as mentioned before, what is important is that you don't compete for resources. You come with your own resources. You can have predictable cost. So it's also important for businesses to predict how much it will cost to run the system. But yeah, the next challenge is really vertical scalability. So Tezos II, this idea that not only you can scale horizontally but also vertically. So in a single rollup, being able to reach maybe one day 1 million TPS would be great. Yeah, that's and would provide exactly the same kind of value for users, but also better composability, better with the same kind of predictable cost, etc.
And so looking forward to 2024, Arthur, what are some of the most exciting things or the things that you're most excited about that we can expect to see on Tezos this year?
Well, I think the Etherlink launch is going to be quite exciting, and we'll see new apps launching on Etherlink. Another thing I'm excited about is the DAL, which is a data availability layer. So there's really two components in scaling Tezos. One is the rollup that was done with the Mumbai upgrade. But in that million or 1.4 million TPS demo, we were still relying on data availability committees, so that the transaction was processed and secured by the chain, but the content of the transaction was hosted on a separate server. So to make it 100% decentralized and have everything on the chain, we need a thing called the data availability layer. It's been known in other systems. So in Ethereum, they call it dank sharding, and we've seen systems a little similar to the data availability layer launch on Near, on Celestia, and others. So we have one now which is being tested on Tezos and should be rolling out fully this year to the makers. And that really, I would say, completes the basic tools needed for really scaling Tezos to very high levels.
And so, it sounds like you guys have an exciting roadmap ahead this year and into the future. And so, Arthur, I guess, and we can go maybe at the end if you guys want. There are some questions, Q&A, if you guys want to go through any of them. I posted some in the private chat, but you can see them in the comments. But I'm curious, are there any closing thoughts that you have for builders, partners, and users who are interested maybe in Tezos or learning more about Tezos or getting involved in how they can do that or where they should go to, find more resources?
Yeah, so Tezos.com is a good place to get some information, and also I would recommend the Discord channel, which is open, and of course following the Tezos handle on Twitter/X.
And so we have a few questions from the audience. I don't know if there's any that you guys particularly want to go over. You can go to the comments tab and you can see some of them. I'll throw out one, and then feel free to you guys can ping in the private chat if you guys want us to go over any. One of the questions that I saw earlier was when we were talking about Tezos 2.0 and languages. One of the questions that we got from somebody was that they were curious about the strategy around languages, formal, verified languages versus enabling any applications built with any language.
I can take that. We talked about Tezos 2 compatibility. That's the important aspect. Mm-hmm. So with the vision for Tezos 2, we have ability to run implement applications in Solidity, in Michelson, Lego, SmartPy, and in JavaScript. So that gives a variety of choices to developers. If they want to build applications in Tezos native Michelson language with formal verification, that's available. If they want to bring existing applications from EVM world in Solidity, that's possible. And if they want to integrate blockchain in the Web2 application with minimum friction, just using JavaScript, that's also available. So it gives a options for people how to build applications, and all of them being part of a single rollup with the single state gives composability. So you can take assets from one application and use another. I think that's quite a compelling and unique value proposition.
Another question that we got was just asking how unique permissionless fraud detection is. Is that something that's just unique to Tezos? Yann, it looks like
yeah, I can take this one. So
yeah,
it's always difficult to say that you provide a unique feature, because the industry is super large. There are many blockchains, etc. But if we look at the L2bits.com, that is a source, a good source of comparison between L2s. You can see that indeed a lot of optimistic rollups have fraud proofs, but most of the time they are restricting the actors that can actually participate in this fraud detection mechanism. So typically for Arbitrum, there is a whitelist of people that can actually refute what's going on. That's not the case for Tezos. It's really open, and I think indeed we may be the only one to provide this permissionless fraud detection mechanism.
Another question regarding rollups was, would it be possible, and the specific example was Solana, but I guess you could do any blockchain, but the question specifically would it be possible to implement a chain such as Solana as a rollup?
Yes, in principle, we have a SDK for building rollups. As we talked about, Etherlink EVM compatible rollup. That's one example, building compatibility with the other chains as a rollup on Tezos. So in principle, it's possible to build logic similar to Solana in Rust and use Tezos rollup SDK to run it as a rollup. Whether it makes sense to do, it's another question, but technically, sure.
Another question that we got from the audience was that in 2023 there were some elections within Tezos that it showed that it can often be difficult, or can sometimes be difficult, to reach quorum. What's kind of your take on that? I mean, obviously, governance. The point of governance is that people can give their opinions, and I mean, I assume people have different opinions from one another, and so sometimes that's a feature and not necessarily a bug. But what do you kind of think about that? And is there a plan to kind of improve governance and be able to come to quorum?
I think there's a mistake, maybe not about quorum, but supermajority. So there's a high participation from community, but maybe in some cases, community didn't reach agreement whether to go ahead with the proposal or not. And that's not a bug. That's a feature of the system. So the community at large decides the evolution. And that gives the security to Tezos system, making sure that actually nothing bad can happen, because community is actively taking part in deciding how to evolve.
And another, I think that maybe our final question, unless a couple more come in here. But Arthur, one of the things that you were talking about was the DAL. And so is it required for bakers to participate in the DAL, or will it be optional? And if it's optional, is there an incentive as a baker to participate?
So in the initial rollout, right now it's optional. Like, people can join this and test and try it. But ultimately, the point of the DAL is to be something that's powered by the bakers. And yes, but by the time it becomes part of the chain, then there's a reward scheme to incentivize it as part of the block reward. But the DAL should represent a very light load for bakers. One of the things that's really interesting about it is that in almost every single function of an L1, the small baker has to do as much work as a big baker, right? You're a small baker, you download the same block as a big baker, you execute the same transaction, you do all the same work, and you get less reward because you're smaller. You stack less, but in terms of like IT, you do the same work. That's not the case with the DAL. So with the DAL, you have to download data, but the amount of data you download is proportional to your size as a baker. So if you're a huge baker like Coinbase, for example, you're going to be downloading a lot of data, and you can because you have all this infrastructure. If you're a small baker, your participation in the DAL is you actually only need to download a very small amount of data as part of being a small baker. And so that's a thing that actually promotes decentralization by not having this kind of fixed cost or at least lowering the impact of the fixed cost on being a maker, which I find interesting.
Great. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts, but if not, I thought this was really great, super informative, exciting to see all the stuff that you guys have on your roadmap, and also really great to see all the community participation and questions, and glad we were able to get through a lot of them. So thank you guys, and looking forward to doing this again next quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.